the circumstances of time, place, time and place, and also the other circumstances before it. So the first thing that you have to bear in mind is there's no one-size-fits-all formula or test for determining when a person is negligent. In fact, as we saw in Picard versus Smith, the fact that you're complying with the law, the fact that you have the right of way, isn't a guarantee that you will be found to have observed the required degree of diligence. Because remember, in Picard versus Smith, car driver had the right of way. And yet, even though he had the right of way, ultimately, the Supreme Court said that he had the last year's chance to avoid the injury. And therefore, the pony rider could not be held responsible for anything. Because even though car driver had the right of way, he was following the law, he was following traffic regulations, still, that did not, or that does not necessarily mean, or that does not necessarily preclude a finding of negligence. So negligence, you have to determine negligence in light of circumstances. There's an objective test, but the objective test is inherently or naturally relative and comparative in nature. The second thing that you have to remember is that in order to find someone negligent, you first have to ascertain what is diligence by. What is the diligence required in a situation, or in that situation, or in this situation confronting me? If I were to find someone negligent, you first have to define, or you first have to specify what an ordinary prudent person would do in that situation, i.e. the standard of diligence. Because it's only when conduct falls below the standard of diligence that you can rightly say that the person was guilty of negligence. In some cases, it's pretty obvious. In some cases, it's pretty obvious what the standard of diligence is. In other cases, it's not. And that leads us to what kind of evidence do you need to prove fault or negligence? If the fault or negligence that you seek to prove or that is involved in a case is simply a question of common knowledge or question of ordinary human experience, then you just need to present ordinary evidence, i.e. non-expert evidence. However, if the factual scenario before you is complex, requires special skill, knowledge, or expertise, i.e. as a general rule medical malpractice, then that's when you need expert testimony. So the evidence that is required to prove fault or negligence is highly dependent on the kind of fault or negligence that you want to establish for or in a given case. So you follow. The concept of negligence is the test for determining negligence is objective, but the objective test has to bear or has to be mindful of the factual circumstances involved. So the test of negligence is objective, but at the same time relative and comparative. And secondly, in order to correctly find someone still guilty of negligence, you first have to determine what is the standard of diligence required in this case. Sometimes, again, it's easy and it's obvious to determine the standard of diligence required or involved. Other times, you need someone to say, or you need evidence to say, what the standard of diligence required in that situation is. For example, medical malpractice cases. As a general rule, burden of proof rests on a bid. So the burden of proving fault or negligence rests with the plaintiff. Why is that? Because we have the default presumptions under law or under our rules of evidence that person takes ordinary care of his concerns, that person is innocent of a crime or wrong, and the basic constitutional presumption of innocence. So that's the reason why, as a general rule, it's the plaintiff who bears the burden of proving fault or negligence. But again, going back to what Erin said earlier, in satisfying or discharging that burden, the kind of evidence that the plaintiff has to present or is required to present to prove the fault or negligence is highly dependent on what kind of fault or negligence are you trying to prove. If you're trying to prove fault or negligence of highly specialized kind, i.e. again, medical malpractice, then of course you have to present expert evidence. Are children capable of fault or negligence? And this is the case of Harco of Jeanette. I think a proper reading, or in light of RA 9344, you have to remember that Harco, the reasoning in Harco, when the Supreme Court said in an obituary, I really think it's an obituary, when the Supreme Court said that children below 9 years of age are conclusively presumed to be capable of victimary negligence, the Supreme Court was relying on a commentary by Sanko. Sanko, in turn, his commentary is based on criminal law, i.e. the exemption for criminal liability of persons below 9 years of age. Because then, Article 12 of the RPC provided that persons, children below 9 years of age, are exempt from criminal liability. However, in light of, there are several reasons why that statement by the Supreme Court cannot be considered or cannot be construed as doctrinal. Why? Because even then, even under the old Article 12 of the RPC, persons who are exempt from criminal liability are not also exempt from civil liability. They may be held civilly liable. It's the parents who will shoulder the civil liability. Secondly, in light of the amendments of RA 9344, the age of exemption for criminal liability has been increased from 9 to 15. However, in Taylor, you saw a 15-year-old boy being found to be negligent by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was able to assess the level of maturity of a 15-year-old vis-a-vis a younger girl who had good enough sense to know that if you put a match to yellow powder, it will likely, or there's a risk, there's a chance that it might explode. So the better approach and the right approach, in my view, and in the view of Timo, if you read this textbook, is that you approach each case involving minors on case-by-case basis. You determine first if there are any factual circumstances involved that might indicate the level of maturity of the minor involved. And if it appears that the minor or that the child involved could have observed the required degree of diligence or was conscious of the fact that what he was doing was negligent or not diligent, then there's no reason why that minor cannot be held, why that minor or his parents cannot be held civilly liable. Going back to this, as a general rule, we're going to proving fault or negligence rests to the plaintiff. But again, we know that there are exceptions. Exception 1, res ipsa. Res ipsa. So you know that there are 4 and not just 3 requirements for res ipsa loquitur. The first requirement that a lot of you forgot, or that some of you forgot when they gave the quiz, is that there must be no direct evidence available to the plaintiff to prove the negligence of the defendant. Because in Huang, what did the Supreme Court say? The Supreme Court said in Huang that if there is direct evidence, then the reason for res ipsa loquitur fades or ceases to exist. Because if there's direct evidence available to the plaintiff, then the plaintiff should present the direct evidence available to him to prove the negligence of the defendant. Because if there's direct evidence available to the plaintiff, then there's no reason anymore for the doctrine of res ipsa loquitur to come into play. Second requirement is that the character, the accident, is of such character, is of such a nature that it does not ordinarily occur unless someone was negligent. And the analysis for this is more rigorous than it initially appears to be. And this is the reason why in our recitations or in our discussions of the cases involving res ipsa, I always ask you, for example, in Africa versus Caldex, or in the case involving the flammable materials in the furniture shop, I always ask you, so gasoline stations always handle gasoline, right? And gasoline is flammable material, right? And of course the answer is yes. But you don't see gasoline stations blowing up left and right? Even though gasoline stations routinely handle gasoline, which is a flammable material. In the same way, the analysis with respect to the furniture shops. Furniture shops handle flammable materials, right? But you don't see furniture shops blowing up left and right? So the reason why I ask you those questions is to establish that, hey, you have to look at what the accident was. And does the accident ordinarily occur? occurred unless someone was negligent. Then the first requisite of the second in this sequence, the second requisite of res ipsa applies. The third and what I think is the most important requirement of res ipsa is that the agency or instrumentality that caused the injury must have been within the exclusive control or management of the defendant. In the NPC case, the dam was obviously within the exclusive control and management of NPC. It had control over the dam. It had the ability to release water at any time if it saw that the water level, if it saw that the safe water level had already been exceeded. It's surprising in Cebu Shipyard. In Cebu Shipyard, again, and this is where a lot of you got killed in your dissertations. The question to you was, how would you say that the dry docking company had exclusive control or management over the vessel, even though the carrier or the vessel's employees were still inside? Answer: because the dry docking company issued rules and regulations which the vessel's employees were supposed to follow. And the last requirement for res ipsa is that the plaintiff must not have been guilty of any contributory negligence. Once the plaintiff proves all those things and is successful in proving all those things, then a presumption or an inference of negligence arises. Then a presumption or inference of negligence arises against the defendant, and generally, it is incumbent upon the defendant to overcome, or to overturn, or to defeat that presumption of negligence, that presumption or inference of negligence that has arisen on his part. But again, there are two things, no? There are two things that you should remember in connection with this portion of our discussion on res ipsa. The first thing that you have to remember, or that you should remember, is that you can actually test whether the court is satisfied that the plaintiff has successfully proven all the requirements for res ipsa. Because again, as I explained to you before, in the litigation process, if the plaintiff is relying on res ipsa, he will not present any evidence regarding the direct negligence of the defendant. He will present evidence, or he must present evidence to prove the requirements or the elements of res ipsa loquitur. If you, as a defendant, want to know whether or not the trial court buys the plaintiff's case, or believes that the plaintiff has satisfactorily proven the elements of res ipsa, then what you do, you can file a demurrer to evidence. If the demurrer to evidence is granted, case is dismissed, obviously, the trial court does not believe that res ipsa is proper in that particular factual scenario. But if the trial court denies your demurrer to evidence, then that sends a pretty strong and clear signal to you that, hey, I have to overcome the presumption or inference of negligence that the plaintiff that has arisen against me because of the doctrine of res ipsa loquitur. So that's the first thing. You can test whether the trial court or the lower court, whether a court agrees with the plaintiff that res ipsa applies or has been satisfactorily established by filing a demurrer to evidence after the plaintiff rests his case. That's the first thing that you have to remember. The second thing that you have to remember is that in at least two cases, the Supreme Court has said that the presumption or inference of negligence that arises from res ipsa loquitur may be overcome by other presumptions, by the presumption of due care and the presumption of innocence. So in other words, it isn't a hard and fast rule that when a plaintiff satisfactorily invokes or establishes the requirements for res ipsa, then and that if the defendant does not present any evidence to overcome that presumption, then automatically and necessarily the defendant loses. Because the Supreme Court has said